like I said, God, he's the one that decided. He said, when you pray, say, Our Father who art in heaven. So God is a father, and father means family. So to be a Christian is to be in a family. It's the very core of who we are and what we are.
Welcome to the AWI podcast. This is a time for real and authentic conversations surrounding Christian worship, discussing questions on theology, artistry, and leadership. Today's discussion is on family in ministry, and we have a special guest of Tommy Walker. And you are a worship leader, you're a singer-songwriter, you're a speaker, author, and you've served at your home church Christian Assembly in Los Angeles, California for over 30 years, which is awesome. You've written over 400 songs, some such as He Knows My Name and We Will Remember, songs that churches around the world know and sing. You've led worship with other Christian leaders such as Rick Warren, Andre Crouch, Greg Laurie, and more. And you're also a husband and a father to 4. So you have a long list of accomplishments, which is awesome. And due to all of that, and specifically, I know that your daughter sings and leads worship as well, correct?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah. And so I thought that you would be an awesome person to talk about what family in ministry is like. Would you just mind sharing what it's like to have your family in ministry?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Great to be here. Great to be a part. And, my story really is, my ministry story really is all about family and ministry, because I grew up in a ministry family. And so I can remember being a little kid, and we would have worship in our home, and my mom had a baby grand piano, and I can remember getting sleepy as a little kid, and I'd go to sleep underneath her baby grand piano while she's playing the hymns and singing and worshiping, and just this, wow, I felt so safe. I didn't even know why I felt so great about it, but it was worship basically. And so yeah, just from the very beginning, I can remember my mom telling me, I always picture this like she grew up in Michigan, really poor. I mean, amidst the Great Depression, and the other thing that's cool is you think back then, like every household had like a piano, like a what do you call it? Not a grand piano, a upright piano.
Yes.
And I just picture her sitting there, and she said she would just read through the hymnal and play it and sing the hymns with tears in her eyes, and just growing up as such a worshiper. And then I like to tell people, especially my mom, but like she really taught me that Christianity is not a have to, but a get to. And she really put on display just a genuine relationship with Jesus. So it becomes very irresistible when you see somebody who so loves you, that so loves Jesus. And so bam, there it was. I was destined. I guess I was destined to be a worship leader because I literally was born and grew up in it. Yeah. I don't think I answered your question. What was your question again?
You're good. Yeah. Well, I love hearing the background of like your life before, like even your own family. And was your mom a worship leader, or was she just constantly playing worship songs?
Yeah. Life was very different then, so my dad was a pastor, so there's like these pictures of my mom playing accordion, and they were missionaries. And so
that's awesome.
Back in the day, you'd get married and the man was the pastor and the wife played piano and all that kind of thing, so they did that kind of thing. But then when the Jesus movement happened, and I was a little kid, and when that revival happened, and then all the hymns got changed to basically worship songs, and that's when I started playing guitar and started writing songs. As soon as I learned 3 chords on the guitar, I wrote a song, because I thought that's what you did when you played guitar. You wrote songs, because I just thought that's what you did. So I instantly wrote a song, and then I kind of kept writing songs. And as a matter of fact, then I got in these little Christian bands, and I'm writing all the songs for the bands. And honestly, like, this isn't like false humility. I'm like, I don't know, like a senior in high school, and all of a sudden I noticed, wow, it seems like it's easier for me to write songs than it is for the other guys in the band.
Totally.
Like, I never even thought about it, but it just came very naturally to me. So it's something I've done from the beginning.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then when you started your own family, had you already been a worship leader?
Yeah. So, yeah, I thankfully got married and got hired at Christian Assembly, the church I'm still at to this day. Shortly after we were married, and became a worship leader. I always joke because as a matter of fact, this will shock you as a young person, but I found out from our accountant, like, as of July 1st, whatever, I don't know when this is going to air, but I will have been on staff at my church for 34 years. I think you should count it like dog years, like I would be like 170 years or something.
Yes.
But God gave me this amazing church that really matched my gifts and my songwriting, and was a great cheerleader for me, and I for them as well. And I know it's very rare to find a match like that, but I pray that for you worship leaders out there, that you will be led to a church where you can serve and really serve that place, but also a place that serves your uniqueness and the abilities God has given you.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then when you started your family, was your family just immediately within church, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, oh man. So yeah, I have 4 children. They were all dedicated at Christian Assembly, and interestingly enough, my 2 sons are, one son is now the youth pastor there, and the other one is the young adult pastor. And they were just announcing it the other day, and so my sons were preaching, so I was like, for me it's this weird surreal thing. There I am, like, still in my same little spot on the stage leading worship, and then 5 feet over is where we dedicated them, and now they're standing there as the pastor, so pretty amazing. Another rare gift that we're still in ministry together. So yeah, living their whole ministry life at that church.
Yeah. Dang.
And then with Eileen, my daughter, really when she's about 14, I mean, she was one of those kids, like, she was singing before she could talk, just constantly singing. You always knew when Eileen woke up, because she would wake up and she'd be singing in her room. And so she's a worship leader, and we've gotten to travel a lot together, and that's a whole topic within itself, to be able to worship as the generations together. Because at least in America, I think maybe America more than most places, the generations seem to be separated in worship. But, if God is a father, because I know what it's like to be a father, he likes it when his kids are together. So we've really had a gift of getting to be one small little humble example of generations worshiping together, and not doing it like we have to, but we love it, And actually, Eileen and my other daughter, Emmy, they just got married this last year, and so now they have husbands, and it's changing a little bit, which it should, but they're all still around, and I just think it honors God in a special way. There's a special anointing when we see generations worshiping together. Yeah, definitely. I always love when I see that, and how cool too that's within your family, and then you get to bring that into the church. And yes, having all the different generations, what do you think is beautiful about intergenerational worship? Well, I mean, like I said, God, he's the one that decided. He said, when you pray, say, "Our Father who art in heaven." So God is a father, and father means family. So to be a Christian is to be in a family. It's the very core of who we are and what we are. And I think that's why the enemy attacks families so much, because there's such power in a healthy family, and a family of unity, and a church that's living in unity and in love and forgiveness. And so when you worship with the generations together, you're just putting on display, yes, we are a family, and we're not hating each other, we're loving each other. And I think also it reminds me of, to be in a healthy family, there has to be a lot of forgiveness going on, because we're all so imperfect. Mm-hmm. And, we follow the great forgiver. The God we serve and worship is the one that died on the cross to forgive us. So therefore we should forgive as we've been forgiven, and that's what families should be all about. And my kids have had to forgive me a lot of times, and likewise. So I think it kind of puts that on display in a very beautiful way when we worship together.
Yeah, that's awesome. When did you said your daughter sang as early as she was born, but what about your sons? When did you know that they had a gift in being pastors?
I would say really when they were in junior high. I was half joking, but I really half wasn't. And I said, boys, one of these days you're going to be my pastor.
Whoa.
And man, they have just jumped into it in an amazing way, really. And I'm so aware of I obviously introduced them to Jesus and tried to be somewhat of an example, but very imperfect. But they have taken it on, and they are running with it. People want to give me and my wife Robin too much credit. It's like they are making their own decisions to follow Jesus and really be used by him. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What have been the challenges of having family in ministry? You mentioned forgiveness, and even specifically, is it hard to not bring church home?
It hasn't been that many challenges, really. Well, as far as not bringing church home, I have taken the Sabbath very seriously. So for me, my whole life, Monday's my Sabbath because I'm working on Sunday.
Yeah.
But I learned a long time ago, you've got to take it serious. And really, on Monday, there's nothing, whatever is going on in church or anything, nada. That's the example we've been given in the Bible. And so my kids are the same way, don't even talk to them on Monday and that just helps a lot. But when we get together, and have dinner together or whatever, we have no rule. We're happy to talk about some wins and losses. And I don't know, it's just I think it's just amazingly awesome to be in ministry as a family, to tell you the truth. I will say this, I have the advantage that I'm not my kid's boss. If I was the pastor and they were kind of under me in that way, then that could probably be trickier. So yeah. I'm one of the worship leaders at my church, and we have a pastor, and the pastor is, in that sense, is over me and is over them. And so if they're having an issue or a problem, it's not coming straight to me. So I think if that's possible in family and ministry, I think that would only be helpful.
Yeah. No, that is definitely helpful, because I've even found, even in some friendships, of one of my friends is my supervisor in church, and so it's that sometimes creates a dynamic where it's we don't feel like equals in moments, and that creates a level of tension. And naturally, you're their father, so there is that distance already, which is helpful, but it's also that's nice that you're not being you need to fix this, or all those things.
Yeah, or if say for example they were doing their work or whatever, then all of a sudden I have to take off my dad hat and put in my boss hat, and that would be really awkward. But I don't have to ever do that. Somebody else do. And by the way, so my daughter Emmy just got married, and her, it's a long story, but her brand new husband now just got on staff at Christian Assembly as a worship leader.
Whoa.
And mostly with the student ministries with my other son, and so I'll be interacting with him a lot. But it's really a cool arrangement because we're acting, and he's also a songwriter like me, so we're interacting a lot. But I'm also not his boss, so it's just perfect.
Perfect. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. You got a very fortunate setup with how you have it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm just so fortunate to have my kids live near me, And this is one of my thing when my kids were going to college. I'm saying, like, okay, I'm going to live in LA. If you want me to pay for college, you got to go to a local college because you're going to meet somebody, and I want them to be from here because I want to open up the chances that we'll be around each other, because then the grandkids are going to come, which now I have 4 grandkids. And it's just, anyways, it doesn't always work that way, but so far so good.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Are there lessons that you've learned of how to best raise up your kids in ministry? Of, like, I mean, even what did Sundays look like when they were little?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Going back to my mom, the first thing is you have to be an example as a parent of somebody that actually has a relationship with Jesus, and it's authentic, and it's not like only on the stage, but it's at home as well. And so this is why I say it's so important that you worship with your kids. Because as a parent, a huge part of your job is to teach them, don't do this, the do's and don'ts and all that of life. And also the do's and don'ts that are in the Bible. But if you just teach the do's and don'ts and not the relation, and put
without the relationship,
then it's just like, well, I don't really care about that. But if you can show them that you have relationships. So one of the best ways to show your relationship with Jesus, to put it on display, is worship. And that goes back to the generational thing, is we figured out in America how to separate us and keep us separate as families when we worship. But the most powerful thing was watching my parents worship when I was a little kid. I was like, wow, I think they actually believe this, And then, so my kids, this is just the way we did it. Once they got, it probably was earlier than this, but for sure junior high, I mean, they were in church with us, worshiping with us for the rest of their lives, basically, because we wanted to be together worshiping as a family. So establishing their relationship with God is the first thing before ministry, obviously. And then okay, what was the question again?
I was curious what Sundays looked like for, like, when you were a father and, like, your kids. How did they become even introduced into church and into growing in ministry?
Yeah, well, like church is, we're a church family. Church is not negotiable. Like, we go to church every week, whether I'm leading or not. That's who we are. Sometimes I think parents like, well, I don't want to force it. Until they're 18, there's a lot of things that you're the parent, they're the kid, you're going to church, And I believe, and you do it with joy, and you show them your relationship with God. And anyways, that's what we did. And I was, most of the time I was up there leading worship, and they were sitting with my wife, and I don't know, it just seemed to work out.
Good. Yeah.
And my other daughter is more of a musician, Emmy, and so we've done a lot of practicing together and just trying to involve them in my life. The other thing I'd like to say is it really helps if you're a fun parent. Like, you can't just be just the rule-driven whatever, everything. There gotta be something about you that makes your kids want to be around you and take them to do fun stuff. And and kind of be mindful of what really makes life fun for them and do it with them.
Yeah. Obviously you didn't really struggle with this, but for anyone that might struggle with their kids not wanting to go to church or not wanting to be involved, what would you recommend?
I mean, I realize that that's certainly the case a lot of times, and I guess I'm not the greatest authority on that because I didn't run into it, but I guess I would just go back and say, just kindly, like, look, this is who we are as a family, and we're going to go to church. When you turn 18 or whatever age you want to decide, you can never go again if you want, and we're going to love you to death. But when you're living in our house, this is who we are and what we do, and just love them through it. Don't be judgmental at all, and still be the fun parent, loving parent. But it's just, church is a weird thing. It's more profound than people think. We treat church kind of like, do you want to go to the movies or not? And there's a lot of things that happen in church, even when you go to church and it's the most boring service of all time and you're a kid and you hated it. Maybe everyone hated it that day. It was just terrible. But there's something about, we have busy lives, but it's Sunday, we're going to take our shower and get dressed and go to this place to worship God, and we're going to go do all this. It's a big hassle, but it's important enough that we go give our allegiance to God, this higher power, which of course in Christianity we believe is Jesus. So we're going to go do this, and we're going to do it as a family, and we're going to come back home, and then you can do whatever you want. But to have that practice, that rotation in your life is speaking volumes. And then you go and you encounter people. John over there just lost his parents, and he's fighting for his faith and worshiping God anyways, and you hear these stories and you meet these people like this, and it grows your faith, and especially with like a junior high kid or something, like you have no idea what something that was being planted that grows decades later, So I, not just because I'm a worship leader in ministry, but I've watched it through the decades in my church. If I've said anything so far, you should keep this. I've been in church for decades, and I've watched the families that come and worship as a family. And way the majority of the time, those kids end up following Jesus. And I've seen the families that come and don't come, or the parents only come, or it's just very spotty. And I just kind of never hear from them again. Obviously, that is not 100% at all. But if you want to just think of averages from somebody that's witnessed it, church is a powerful thing. Plus, lastly, when you go to church, you're also being a blessing. You're growing the faith of the person next to you because you showed up. And so it's an opportunity to give your faith away.
Yeah, and I think there's something that's so powerful about church too, because it creates that congregational worship that we don't get when it's just us and the Lord. As sweet as it is, and it's just us and the Lord, it's that congregational aspect that, the person next to me, like, you see how into worship they are, that encourages your faith, and that encourages you to worship deeper and harder. And that's something that you don't get on your own. You don't get when you're just driving in the car and like singing a worship song. And I love that about congregational worship. I have a question of, so yes, Sundays are so important, but then what did the weekly look like? Did you guys worship together at home? Did you have constant conversations about God? How do you balance that?
Yeah, we did have worship at home, and I had it when I was a kid in my home, and then we would differ, and we'd make it sometimes just spontaneous, and I just pull the guitar out and we would just sing some songs, but definitely purposely worship at home. And then sometimes we'd meet with my sister, brother, and the cousins, and they would worship too, and so that was also a huge benefit, and we just kind of worship all over the place. And and then at the dinner table is another big thing. I know we've heard about this, but families rarely eat together at a dinner table. But a lot of powerful things can happen at a dinner table. And so I would do games. Like we'd go in a circle, be like, all right, so in heaven, in the new earth, like what would be your favorite thing you could do if you could just imagine anything, and one kid was like, I want to fly, or I want to see Jesus, or whatever. You kind of make it fun, and also you do silly games, like we would always do, like, create your own island. So if you could create your own island to be whatever you want, okay, my island would be Musician Island, and I could instantly play every instrument. Incredible. I would just be shredding like crazy. Okay, and then I would have Surf Island, and I would, you just do these fun, purposeful things, and you bring God into it and make it fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's something too that my family did growing up, was we ate dinner together almost every single night. And if it was not all together at home, it was like we had a sports game on the weekend and like we ate out or something. And that was a regular thing. Like, you are coming home for dinner, we are eating together. And that is truly where I learned so much about Jesus and about the Bible. So many times we had conversations where my dad would tell like testimonies of his life, or would just expand and almost extract like a whole Bible story. And that was genuinely at the dinner table was where I learned so much about Jesus. And I think that is something that, because don't get me wrong, Sundays are incredibly important and powerful, but if that's the only time that your family's talking about Jesus, worshiping together, then it's like that's 1 out of 7 days. But a relationship in Christianity is supposed to be every single day. And that's why I would argue like the dinner table is so important. Yeah, I
mean, and it can even be questions like, what do you think of this verse? Like, I don't understand it. And even if you don't have the greatest answer, you're still talking about it. And telling, that's huge for kids too, to tell this wild story. When I was on this missions trip, or I took kids on mission trip with me too, and remember the time when we got stuck in the mud, and it just unifies you,
Absolutely. Yeah, and stories are so powerful. Jesus chose to be in a story, in a book, for us to read and then interact with. And the way our brain lights up when we're reading a story is how it lights up when I'm having a conversation with the person in front of me. It lights up in a way, and that's where we get to actually know someone. So how cool is it too when you share stories with your kid of your own life? They get to actually know you in a deeper way, and then they feel like they're a part of that story as well, which is so cool.
That's right. That's well said, because stories are just, life stories just really bind you together in a powerful way, and they're so much less boring.
Yes, yeah. Well, in memories, it's like there's a reason why we remember things, and there's a reason, those shared experiences too, like getting to share in worship with your family, like that creates an impact and a memory in them that they will hold on to forever.
I have a couple of stories. When years ago, I was a part of this thing called Promise Keepers, and at its height, they would fill up stadiums all over the country. And the biggest one they did was in Washington, D.C. in the mall. So I was on the worship team, and they had jumbotrons like every 100 yards, and there was 1.3 million men there. And my son Jake was 7 years old at the time, and I brought him. But there was high security, so I couldn't be with him for like 6 hours, but my brother was with him, and so the whole time I'm up there, I'm playing, and I'm like gigantic on the jumbotron, and I'm just thinking, Jake's thinking his dad's so awesome, he's on the jumbotron. So finally, the whole thing's over, and I see Jake in the distance, with the Capitol building in the background, and he comes running towards me, and so I feel like we're running towards each other in slow motion. He's going to say, Dad, I saw you on the jumbotron. And then he comes up to me. He's like, Dad, you won't believe what I saw. I'm like, yeah, I know. And then you probably don't realize it, but behind the Capitol building, there's this like man-made little pond there. I go, Dad, I saw a fish in the pond. I was like,
and you're like, okay. That's a humbling moment.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a great lesson. Like, my kids didn't, whatever notoriety, whatever I've ever had, they care so much less about that as compared to me being a dad, you know.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of funny stories like that, but it's such a reminder to me of what's important to them. And to this day, like Jake will say, Dad, I'm just so grateful that you've been faithful, you know, to Mom and to the church and everything. He never really mentions any of my accolades. That's so less important than faithfulness, you know. So.
Yeah. No, faithfulness is huge, and you being faithful to your kids, to your family, teaches them to be faithful and teaches them to be faithful to the Lord. And that, I mean, faithfulness is steadiness, it's consistency, it's a constant thing, and that is how you keep a relationship with the God as well. And when you show that in every area of your life, that impacts them, and so that's beautiful. Yeah. Are there thorns that come with having family in ministry?
You know, I just, like I said, not really, not for me. I think what I have seen is nothing is more deadly than a parent in ministry that kind of lives a double life, that really shows an unauthentic relationship with the Lord at home, and then a big authentic one supposedly in public. And then, you know, any of the broken weirdness of families, of favoritism and things like that, can be really, really, really tough. And of course, Rob and I have been very imperfect, but by God's grace, I just, all I can say is we're just living the dream. It's awesome.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, as we come to a close, is there any piece of advice that you would want to give to our listeners of how to do family and ministry?
Yeah. You know, I'm just going to come back to take every opportunity to put your relationship with Jesus on display. Of course, worship is one of the greatest ways to do it, but we want to, your kids and or your parents or your siblings, whatever, they want to know, do you really love him? Do you really know him? Is there, we say it so loosely, I have a personal relationship with Jesus. I mean, do you know how to do your devotional time and be quiet and try to hear God's voice? Like, if you can put that on display and encourage it in that way in your family, it's going to be a blessed life.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for that and for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's episode on our podcast. This week we talked about family and ministry with Tommy Walker, and he told us all about how his sons and his daughters have been in ministry with him and the power of intergenerational worship. If you liked this episode, click that like button and subscribe to our channel for more. We'll see you soon.